That seat isn't for people like you. Move to the back where you belong.
Jessica Palmer's voice cut through the bustling DFW Airport terminal, like a blade sharp, deliberate, and loud enough for everyone within 30 feet to hear. She stood behind the Delta gate counter at gate B12, arms crossed, staring down the black woman in the tailored navy blazer like she was a problem that needed immediate solving. The woman didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't even raise her voice. She simply stood there, boarding pass in hand, with the kind of quiet dignity that comes from facing this exact moment 1,000 times before. What Jessica didn't know was that in exactly 14 minutes, she would discover that the woman she just humiliated owned 73% of Delta Airlines. Effectively, she had just told her boss's boss's boss to sit in the back of the plane. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's rewind to how this moment began. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been told you don't belong somewhere only to discover you had every right to be there? If this story strikes a chord with you, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because what you're about to witness will remind you that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. The Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport hummed with its usual Thursday afternoon chaos. Flight delays scrolled across monitors, frustrated travelers clutched coffee cups like lifelines, and the intercom crackled with gate changes and boarding announcements. Gate B12 buzzed with particular tension as passengers for Flight 447 to Atlanta gathered around the boarding area, some checking phones, others pacing impatiently. Maya Thompson, 42 years old, walked through this chaos with the measured pace of someone who had learned to navigate hostile territory. She wore a navy blazer over dark jeans, simple black loafers, and carried a leather messenger bag that had seen better days. Nothing about her appearance screamed wealth or power. That was intentional. Maya had been on more planes than most people could count in their lifetimes. As the founder of Meridian Holdings and secretly the largest private investor in Delta Airlines, she was accustomed to airport lounges, first-class boarding, and the occasional nod of recognition from those who knew the weight of her decisions. But today, like many days over the past 18 months, she traveled anonymously. She had a philosophy about power that her MIT professors never taught her. You can't change institutions you don't own. And since acquiring her controlling stake in Delta 18 months ago through a complex web of shell companies and private equity maneuvers, Maya had been conducting her own quiet research into how the airline actually treated its customers. The results had been disappointing, but not surprising. As Maya approached Gate B12, her mind drifted to another hot July day 34 years earlier. 8-year-old Maya had been invited to a birthday party at the Willowbrook Country Club in her hometown outside Atlanta. She had been so excited, wearing her favorite pink dress with the ruffles her grandmother had sewn by hand. But when she arrived at the club's pool area, the manager took one look at her and said, "I'm sorry, but people like you don't swim here. This is a private club." The humiliation had burned itself into her memory. Not just the words, but the way the other children's parents had looked at her. Some with pity, others with uncomfortable relief that someone else had handled the problem. That 8-year-old girl had made herself a promise that day. Someday she would own places like this. Someday she would decide who belonged and who didn't. Maya had spent the next 3 decades turning that childhood promise into reality. MIT computer science degree earned on full scholarship. First job at a tech startup where she coded 18-hour days while her white colleagues got promoted around her. The decision to launch her own company at 25 when venture capitalists told her that people like her didn't have what it takes to scale a technology business. The sale of that company for $2.3 billion had been sweet vindication. But money, Maya had learned, was just the beginning. Real change required ownership, control, the ability to reshape institutions from the inside out. which is why she found herself at Gate B12 on this particular Thursday, dressed like any other business traveler about to board a flight where she would once again observe how her own airline treated its customers. Behind the counter, Jessica Palmer was having the kind of day that made her question her career choices. 12 years she'd been working for Delta, starting as a ticket agent and working her way up to gate supervisor. She took pride in maintaining order, following protocols, ensuring that passengers understood the hierarchy of airline travel. Some people earned first class through status and loyalty. Others tried to game the institution. Jessica prided herself on spotting the difference. At 38, Jessica had developed what she considered a keen eye for passengers who didn't fit the profile of first-class travelers. She'd learned to trust her instincts about who belonged where, and those instincts rarely steered her wrong. When she saw the black woman approaching her counter, something immediately triggered her suspicion radar. Next, Jessica called out her tone already carrying an edge of skepticism. Maya stepped forward, boarding pass in hand. "Good afternoon. I'm wondering if there might be any possibility of an earlier flight to Atlanta." Jessica's eyes flicked from Maya's face to her clothes to the boarding pass. First class seat 2A. Her suspicion deepened. "May I see your ID and boarding confirmation?" Maya handed over her driver's license and phone, displaying her mobile boarding pass. Jessica studied both with the intensity of a detective examining evidence at a crime scene. "Maya Thompson." Jessica read aloud as if testing whether the name would sound fraudulent when spoken. She looked at the boarding pass again, then back at Maya's face. "This shows first class." "Yes, that's correct. And you booked this yourself." The question hung in the air like an accusation. Maya had heard this tone before in countless boardrooms and business meetings. The subtle implication that perhaps she hadn't earned her place at the table, that maybe someone else had made a mistake in letting her into spaces where she didn't belong. "I did," Maya said evenly. Jessica's fingers hovered over her keyboard. She pulled up Maya's reservation, frowning at the screen as if the information displayed there couldn't possibly be correct. "It shows here that you're actually on the wait list for an upgrade. You're not confirmed for first class." Maya's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in her stomach. She had been confirmed in first class for 3 days. She had the email confirmations to prove it. "I believe there's been a mistake. I have confirmation emails showing the computer doesn't lie." Jessica interrupted, her voice growing louder. "You're showing as waitlisted. Economy class seat 29. C." From the boarding area, a young man named Carlos Martinez looked up from his phone. 29 years old college senior at UT Dallas. Carlos had been waiting for his connecting flight when he noticed the tension building at the gate counter. Something about the gate agent's tone made him pay attention. Carlos had grown up in East Dallas, the son of immigrants who cleaned office buildings at night so he could go to college during the day. He'd learned to recognize the particular kind of hostility that came disguised as customer service. His finger hovered over his phone's camera app. "Ma'am Jessica," continued her voice now carrying clearly across the gate area. "I need to see proof that you can afford a first-class seat. Do you have documentation of employment or income verification?" A few passengers looked up from their phones. The request was unusual, to put it mildly. Airlines didn't typically ask passengers to prove their financial worthiness to occupy seats they'd already purchased. Maya's voice remained calm, but her words carried an edge. "I'm sorry. Are you asking me to prove that I can afford a seat I've already paid for?" "We have protocols for irregular bookings," Jessica said, her confidence growing as she sensed support from her supervisor approaching the counter. "Sometimes people use stolen credit cards or fraudulent information to book premium seats. I'm just doing my job." Amanda Foster, the shift manager, stepped up beside Jessica. At 35, Amanda had worked her way up through Delta's ranks by supporting her supervisors and not making waves. When Jessica caught her eye and tilted her head toward Maya, Amanda immediately understood what was being communicated. "Is there a problem here?" Amanda asked, her tone suggesting that the problem was Maya's presence rather than Jessica's behavior. "This passenger is claiming to have a confirmed first-class seat," Jessica explained, "but her record shows she's waitlisted. She's refusing to provide income verification." Maya turned to Amanda. "I haven't refused anything. I've simply asked why I need to prove my income when I have a confirmed reservation and boarding pass." Amanda studied Maya with the same suspicious expression Jessica had worn. "Ma'am, we have security protocols. If there's any question about the validity of a booking, we need to verify it. And what exactly makes you question the validity of my booking?" The question hung in the air. Neither Jessica nor Amanda wanted to say out loud what they were both thinking, but their silence spoke volumes. From his seat in the boarding area, Carlos had quietly started live streaming on his Instagram account. "Y'all," he whispered to his phone, "I'm here at DFW Gate B12, and something really messed up is happening right now. These gate agents are basically asking this black woman to prove she's rich enough for first class." The viewer count on his stream climbed steadily. 12 watching, 23, 47. Elena Rivera, a junior gate agent working her first week on the job, watched the interaction with growing discomfort. At 26, Elena was still learning the ropes, but something about this exchange felt wrong. She'd gone through all the customer service training learned about treating passengers with dignity and respect. But what she was witnessing didn't match anything she'd been taught. Elena caught Maya's eye for a brief moment. Something passed between them, a flash of recognition perhaps, or just the universal understanding between women who'd found themselves outnumbered in hostile spaces. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her emails until she found the confirmation from 3 days earlier. "Here's my original booking confirmation. First class seat 2. A confirmed and paid for." Jessica glanced at the phone screen but didn't really look. "Confirmations can be faked. I need to see the credit card you used to book this flight." The request was outrageous, and everyone within earshot knew it. Airlines didn't ask passengers to prove they owned the credit cards they'd used for booking. But Jessica seemed committed to this path, and Amanda was backing her up. Maya handed over her Black American Express card. Jessica examined it like a forensic expert, holding it up to the light, checking the numbers, running her finger over the embossed letters. This could be fake, too. These days, anyone can get a fake credit card that looks real. Carlos's live stream now had 89 viewers, and the comments were starting to flow. "This is insane. Get her name. This is straight-up discrimination. Record everything." Ma'am Amanda interjected. "We're going to need you to contact your bank to verify your identity and financial standing before we can allow you to board in first class." Maya looked around the gate area. Passengers were openly staring now, some recording with their phones, others whispering to their companions. This was exactly the kind of public humiliation that institutions like Delta typically tried to avoid. But Maya had been in situations like this before. In boardrooms where she was the only woman of color being asked to prove she belonged at the negotiating table. In restaurants where hosts assumed she was waiting for a table rather than owning the building. In countless spaces where her presence was questioned, challenged, and scrutinized. The difference was that this time she actually did own the institution. "Let me make sure I understand," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly across the gate area. "You want me to call my bank to prove that I'm financially qualified to sit in a seat I've already purchased on an airline I actually own?" Jessica laughed, a sharp sound that carried more hostility than humor. "Lady, you can claim to own whatever you want. Right now, I'm trying to protect Delta Airlines from credit card fraud." Maya's phone buzzed. A text from her executive assistant, Sarah Mitchell. "Tracking unusual social media activity around DFW Gate B12. Are you okay? Maya typed back quickly. Execute Protocol 7. Sarah's response was immediate. Understood. Standing by. Elena Rivera watched Jessica and Amanda's increasingly aggressive posture with growing alarm. In her brief training period, she'd been told that customer service meant finding ways to help passengers, not creating obstacles for them. But as a new employee, she wasn't sure if she had the authority to speak up. Meanwhile, a woman in an expensive suit approached the counter. Lisa Hayes, 41, was a frequent first-class traveler who prided herself on maintaining the exclusivity of premium cabin service. She'd been watching the exchange with approval. "Excuse me," Lisa said to Jessica, "but I just wanted to say thank you for maintaining standards. It's refreshing to see someone actually doing their job properly." Jessica beamed at the validation. "We have to protect the integrity of the first-class cabin." Lisa nodded vigorously. "Exactly. Some people think they can just walk into first class these days. There has to be some way to maintain quality control." Maya turned to Lisa. "Quality control? Well?" Lisa said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd never been questioned about her right to be anywhere. "First class is for people who've earned it. People who've built businesses, created value, contributed to society. Not everyone understands that." "And how exactly do you determine who's contributed to society?" Maya asked. Lisa gestured vaguely. "Oh, you know. You can usually tell. It's about presentation education, the way someone carries themselves. Some people just fit the first-class environment, and others—" She shrugged. Carlos's live stream was now approaching 200 viewers. The comments were getting more heated. "This lady is straight up racist. Where's her manager? Someone needs to stop this. Go viral with this." Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from a number that made Jessica's eyes widen when she caught sight of the caller ID, David Rodriguez, CEO Delta Airlines. Maya looked at Jessica, then at Amanda, then at Lisa. "I think it's time we cleared up this misunderstanding," she said calmly. "But first I want to make sure everyone understands exactly what they've said and done here today." She turned to Carlos, who was openly live streaming now. "Young man, are you recording this?" Carlos nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Live on Instagram. About 300 people watching now." "Good," Maya said. "Because I think your viewers are about to learn something very important about how institutions change." She answered her phone, speaking clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Hi, David. Yes, I'm at DFW right now, Gate B12, Flight 447 to Atlanta." Jessica's confident expression began to falter as she noticed Maya using the CEO's first name. "No, I'm being denied boarding despite having a confirmed first-class reservation." Maya continued. "The gate agents are asking me to prove my income and identity because they believe my booking might be fraudulent." David Rodriguez's voice was loud enough for several people to hear. "Maya, I'm so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. Who's the gate agent?" "I'm calling DFW operations immediately." Maya looked directly at Jessica Palmer. "Her name is Jessica Palmer, badge number 4471. The color began to drain from Jessica's face as she heard her name and badge number being reported directly to the airline's CEO. But Maya wasn't finished. David Maya continued, her voice carrying clearly across Gate B12. "Jessica Palmer just told me that first class isn't for people like me and that I should move to the back where I belong." The silence that followed was deafening. Every conversation in the gate area stopped. Passengers looked up from their phones, their meals, their magazines. Even the ambient airport noise seemed to fade into the background. David Rodriguez's voice exploded through the phone speaker loud enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear clearly. She said what Jessica Palmer's face had gone from confident pink to ashen gray in the span of 10 seconds. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no sound emerged. The swagger she'd worn like armor just moments before had evaporated completely. Amanda Foster took a step backward, suddenly very interested in the paperwork on the counter behind her. Lisa Hayes, who had been so vocal in her support just moments earlier, now studied her manicured nails with intense concentration. Maya continued her conversation with the CEO, her voice steady and professional. She also demanded that I prove my income and accused me of using stolen credit cards. She claimed my confirmed first-class reservation was actually a wait list, despite having email confirmations showing otherwise. Maya David's voice came through the speaker, each word measured and deliberate. As our largest shareholder and the person who essentially owns this airline, you should never, ever experience this kind of treatment. The words hit the gate area like a thunderbolt. Carlos Martinez's livestream chat exploded. Did he just say largest shareholder? She owns the airline. This is about to get real screenshots. Someone get screenshots. The viewer count on his stream was climbing rapidly: 547, 823, 1,200. Elena Rivera's mouth fell open. She looked from Maya to Jessica to Amanda, then back to Maya, trying to process what she'd just heard. The quiet woman who'd been subjected to 20 minutes of humiliation and suspicion was the owner of Delta Airlines. Jessica finally found her voice, but it came out as a whisper. That's not possible. Maya smiled for the first time since the conversation began, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had been consistently underestimated their entire life and was about to prove exactly how costly that mistake could be. Jessica Maya said calmly, "Would you like me to put David on speaker so he can explain to everyone here exactly who I am?" Before Jessica could respond, David Rodriguez's voice filled the gate area. For anyone listening, this is David Rodriguez, CEO of Delta Airlines. Maya Thompson is the founder and managing partner of Meridian Holdings, which owns a controlling 73% stake in Delta Airlines. She is effectively my boss. The reaction was immediate and varied. Carlos's viewers had now topped 2,000, and his chat was moving so fast he could barely read it. Passengers throughout the gate area had their phones out, recording, texting, calling friends. Several people were already posting to social media platforms. Elena Rivera stepped forward from behind the counter. Her voice was small but clear. "Ms. Thompson, I tried to tell them this wasn't right. I tried to say something, but..." Maya turned to Elena with a much warmer expression. "What's your name, Elena Rivera? I've been working here for 6 days. Elena, in your 6 days of training, were you taught that passengers needed to prove their income before boarding? No, ma'am. We were taught to treat every passenger with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance or anything else." Maya nodded. "And did you witness everything that happened here today?" Elena glanced nervously at Jessica and Amanda, then straightened her shoulders. "Yes, ma'am. I saw everything." Meanwhile, Jessica was having what could only be described as a complete meltdown. "This has to be some kind of setup," she said, her voice rising to near hysteria. "This is impossible. She doesn't look like... she's not dressed like..." "Like what?" Jessica Maya asked quietly. Jessica's mouth worked soundlessly as she realized she was about to say something that would end any remaining possibility of keeping her job. Amanda Foster, sensing the direction this conversation was heading, tried to salvage the situation. "I think what Jessica means is that we have protocols for verifying premium bookings when there are irregularities in the reservations." "What irregularities?" Maya asked. Amanda gestured vaguely. "Well, sometimes the booking patterns look suspicious, or the passenger profile doesn't match the typical first-class demographic." Passenger profile. Maya's voice remained calm, but everyone in the vicinity could feel the temperature dropping. Lisa Hayes, who had been such an enthusiastic supporter of the gate agent's actions just minutes earlier, was now trying to edge away from the counter without being noticed. Her own recorded comments about quality control and determining who fit the first-class environment were undoubtedly captured on multiple phones. Carlos's live stream had become the epicenter of a social media storm. Hashtag DFW Gate was trending locally, and major news accounts were starting to pick up the story. His viewer count had exploded past 5,000, and he could see notifications popping up as the video was being shared across platforms. "Y'all," Carlos whispered to his audience, "this is history happening right now. This woman just exposed the whole institution live on camera." David Rodriguez's voice came through the speaker again. "Maya, I'm en route to DFW personally to handle this situation. Jessica Palmer is suspended immediately pending a full investigation. Amanda Foster is also suspended pending review of her role in this incident." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Jessica's composure completely collapsed. "Mr. Rodriguez, I was following company policy, and we have guidelines about suspicious bookings." Jessica David's voice was cold. "Which company policy requires you to tell passengers that they don't belong in first class based on their race?" "I never said anything about race," Jessica protested, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew multiple people had recorded the entire interaction. Maya pulled out her own phone and scrolled through her recent recordings. "Would you like me to play back the audio of this conversation, Jessica? I've been recording everything since you first questioned my right to be here." The blood drained from Jessica's face completely. In all her years of implementing what she considered appropriate passenger screening, it had never occurred to her that someone might be documenting her methods. Elena Rivera stepped closer to Maya. "Ms. Thompson, can I say something?" "Of course." Elena took a deep breath. "This isn't the first time I've seen Jessica do this. In my 6 days here, I've watched her question 3 other passengers the same way. All of them were Black or Hispanic. All of them had confirmed reservations. All of them were made to feel like they were doing something wrong just by being here." Jessica whirled around to face Elena. "You have no right to comment on operational procedures you don't understand." "I understand treating people with basic human dignity," Elena replied, her voice growing stronger. "And what I watched happen here today wasn't that." Amanda Foster realized the situation was spiraling completely out of control. "Everyone needs to calm down. This is getting blown out of proportion." Maya turned to Amanda. "Blown out of proportion? Your gate supervisor told me I don't belong in first class because of the color of my skin. Your team accused me of credit card fraud without evidence. You demanded financial documentation that no airline in America requires from paying passengers. Which part of this response seems proportional to you?" By now, the gate area had become a scene of barely controlled chaos. Passengers were openly filming airport security was en route, and Maya could see news crews setting up outside the terminal. The story was no longer contained to Carlos's live stream. It was spreading across every major social media platform. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. "Sarah's story is going viral. CNN wants a statement. Your lawyer is standing by. What are your instructions?" Maya typed back. "Document everything. Full transparency. This ends today." David Rodriguez's voice cut through the noise. "Maya Airport Operations is sending their regional manager to Gate B12 immediately. Security is also en route, but they're there for your protection, not to question your right to be there." Jessica made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. "This whole thing has been taken out of context. I was trying to protect Delta from fraudulent bookings." Maya looked at Jessica with something that might have been pity. "Jessica, in the 18 months since I've owned this airline, I've received dozens of complaints about discrimination at gates just like this one. Complaints about passengers being questioned, humiliated, and made to feel unwelcome based on their appearance. Do you know what those complaints had in common?" Jessica didn't answer. They all described interactions with gate agents who claimed they were just following policy. Agents who insisted they were protecting the airline from irregularities and suspicious bookings. Agents who somehow only found Black and Hispanic passengers suspicious. Maya paused, letting the words sink in. I bought this airline specifically to change that culture. Today, you've shown me exactly what needs to change. Amanda Foster made one final attempt at damage control. Ms. Thompson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Our training emphasizes customer service, and Amanda Maya interrupted you called security on a paying passenger whose only crime was being black in first class. You backed up your supervisor when she made racist comments. You participated in a pattern of discrimination that has been documented and reported for months. There's no misunderstanding here. Elena Rivera spoke up again. Ms. Thompson, there's something else you should know. Last week I heard Jessica and Amanda talking about passengers they called problems. They specifically mentioned looking out for people who didn't fit what they called the Delta demographic. Jessica's eyes went wide with panic. Elena, you're lying. You're a new employee. You don't understand how things work. I may be new, Elena said, but I understand right from wrong. And what happened here today was wrong. Carlos's live stream had now been picked up by major news outlets. His phone was buzzing constantly with interview requests, and the hashtag Delta owner was trending nationally. Maya could see airport security approaching along with what appeared to be a Delta regional manager moving quickly through the terminal. The situation had reached the point where it would either be resolved immediately or it would become an even bigger public relations nightmare for the airline she owned. But Maya wasn't interested in managing the optics. She was interested in justice. And justice she had learned over 4 decades of fighting for her place in rooms that didn't want her sometimes required making people very uncomfortable with the truth about their own behavior. The regional manager arrived at gate B12 out of breath and clearly panicked. Michael Torres, a 15-year Delta veteran, had never received a direct call from the CEO about a passenger service issue. When David Rodriguez personally ordered him to respond to gate B12 immediately, he knew something unprecedented was happening. What he found when he arrived was beyond his worst nightmare. Michael Torres approached gate B12 with the expression of a man walking toward his own execution. The scene that greeted him defied every crisis management scenario he'd trained for in his 15 years with Delta Airlines. At the center of it all stood Maya Thompson, calm and composed despite being surrounded by chaos. Her phone was still connected to CEO David Rodriguez's passengers. Throughout the gate area were recording with their devices, and a young man in the corner was clearly live streaming to what appeared to be thousands of viewers. Ms. Thompson, Michael said slightly out of breath, I'm Michael Torres, Regional Operations Manager. On behalf of Delta Airlines, I want to apologize profusely for this completely unacceptable situation. Maya studied Michael carefully. Unlike Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster, his distress appeared genuine rather than performative. Mr. Torres, are you familiar with the details of what happened here today? I've been briefed by CEO Rodriguez. Michael replied, sweat beading on his forehead despite the airport's air conditioning. Ms. Thompson, what you've experienced is completely contrary to Delta's values and policies. From behind the counter, Jessica made one final desperate attempt to salvage her position. Mr. Torres, I was following established protocols for irregular bookings. This passenger's reservation showed inconsistencies that required verification. Michael Torres turned to Jessica with an expression of barely controlled fury. Jessica, you told a paying passenger that first class isn't for people like her. You told our largest shareholder to move to the back where she belongs. Exactly which protocol covers racial discrimination? The words hung in the air like an indictment. Carlos Martinez's live stream chat was exploding with reactions. Drag her. Finally, some accountability. This manager gets it. She's going down. Carlos's viewer count had climbed past 8,000, and he could see that major news organizations were now sharing his stream. The hashtag DFW Gate hashtag was trending in multiple cities, and celebrity accounts were beginning to amplify the story. Elena Rivera stepped forward again. her confidence growing with each moment. Mr. Torres, I need to report what I've witnessed as a Delta employee. Go ahead, Elena. In the 6 days I've worked here, I've seen Jessica Palmer subject 3 passengers to the same treatment Ms. Thompson received today. All were minorities with confirmed first-class reservations. All were questioned about their ability to afford their seats. All were made to feel unwelcome and suspicious. Michael Torres's expression grew darker. Did you report these incidents? Elena glanced nervously at Amanda Foster before responding. I tried to discuss my concerns with Amanda, but I was told that questioning supervisor decisions could impact my employment status. Amanda Michael turned to the shift manager. Is this true? Amanda's confident facade was crumbling rapidly. New employees sometimes don't understand the complexity of operational decisions. I was trying to help Elena learn appropriate chain of command. By teaching her to ignore discrimination. Michael's voice carried clearly across the gate area. Maya had been listening to this exchange with growing interest. The pattern Elena described matched exactly what her own internal investigations had suggested, that discrimination at Delta wasn't limited to individual bad actors, but was enabled by supervisors who looked the other way. Mr. Torres, Maya said, I think we need to expand this conversation beyond just today's incident. Michael nodded grimly. I agree completely. Mrs. Thompson, would you be willing to? He was interrupted by the arrival of airport security led by Chief Mark Williams, a 20-year veteran of airport operations who had seen every conceivable type of passenger dispute. What he hadn't seen was a dispute where the passenger owned the airline. Ms. Thompson. Chief Williams said respectfully, I understand there's been an incident. Is there anything you need from security? Jessica Palmer looked hopeful for the first time in 20 minutes. Perhaps security would restore some sense of order, maybe even escort the problematic passenger away from the gate. Maya looked at Chief Williams thoughtfully. Actually, yes. I'd like to ensure that everything that happened here today is properly documented. This incident represents a pattern of behavior that needs to be thoroughly investigated. Absolutely, Chief Williams agreed. We have the gate area under full surveillance, and I understand multiple passengers have recorded the interaction. Carlos raised his hand. I've been live streaming the whole thing. Almost 10,000 people watching now. Chief Williams nodded. Son, we may need a copy of that footage for our investigation. No problem. This needs to be seen. Meanwhile, Maya's phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts. News organizations, civil rights groups, and investors were all seeking statements. But Maya was focused on something more immediate than media management. She turned to address the crowd of passengers who had gathered around Gate B12. Many were supposed to be on Flight 447, but the boarding process had been completely suspended while this drama unfolded. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya said, her voice carrying clearly across the gate area. I want to apologize that your travel plans have been disrupted by this incident. What you've witnessed today is exactly why I invested in Delta Airlines, to change a culture that treats some passengers as more deserving than others. An older black businessman in the crowd spoke up. Ma'am, we've all seen this happen before. Thank you for finally doing something about it. A Latina mother traveling with 2 children nodded emphatically. My kids are learning today that standing up to discrimination is the right thing to do even when it's uncomfortable. Carlos's live stream was capturing all of this, and his viewers were responding emotionally. This is what change looks like. She's not just fighting for herself. This woman is a hero. Finally, someone with power using it, right? Jessica Palmer was watching her 12-year career implode in real time. The confident authority she'd wielded just an hour earlier had been revealed as nothing more than institutionalized prejudice backed by corporate policy. Now, facing the actual owner of the institution, She had no power at all. Ms. Thompson. Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know who you were. Maya's response was immediate and devastating. And if I had been anyone else, would that have made your behavior acceptable? The question exposed the fundamental flaw in Jessica's thinking. Her discrimination wasn't wrong because Maya happened to be wealthy and powerful. It was wrong because it was discrimination. Period. Elena Rivera seized this moment to speak up again. Ms. Thompson, there's something else you need to know. Jessica and Amanda weren't just targeting passengers randomly. They had what they called profiles of suspicious behavior. Michael Torres's attention snapped to Elena. What kind of profiles? Young black men traveling alone, especially with one-way tickets. Hispanic families with multiple children. Black women in business attire who looked too well dressed for their age. Anyone who seemed like they might be flying first class for the first time. The organized nature of the discrimination was becoming clear. This wasn't just individual prejudice. It was an organized approach to policing who belonged in premium cabin service. Maya pulled out her phone and called her assistant, Sarah Mitchell. Sarah, I need you to connect me with our legal team immediately. We need a comprehensive audit of customer service complaints at DFW going back 2 years. Already on it, Sarah replied. I've been monitoring the social media explosion around this incident. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News all want exclusive interviews. Your story is trending #1 on Twitter. Good. Transparency is the only way to create accountability. Amanda Foster made one last attempt to minimize her role. Ms. Thompson, I want you to know that I never intended for anyone to feel discriminated against. We were just trying to maintain operational security. Maya turned to Amanda with a look that could have frozen water. Amanda, you watched your supervisor tell me I don't belong in first class because of my race. You called security on me for the crime of being black with a confirmed reservation. You participated in a pattern of discrimination that has been harming passengers for months. Your intentions are irrelevant compared to the impact of your actions. Carlos's live stream had become a phenomenon. Major celebrities were sharing the video, news organizations were calling for comments and #justice. For Maya was trending worldwide. The story had transcended airline customer service. It had become a symbol of institutional discrimination and corporate accountability. David Rodriguez's voice came through Maya's phone again. Maya, I'm about to land at DFW. Regional media is requesting statements about Delta's commitment to customer service. How would you like to handle this? Maya looked around the gate area at Elena Rivera, who had found her voice and used it to speak truth. At Carlos Martinez, who had documented everything for the world to see. At the passengers who had witnessed discrimination and refused to look away. At Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster, who represented a culture that needed to change. David Maya said, I think it's time for complete transparency. This isn't just about what happened to me today. This is about changing an entire culture of assumptions about who belongs where. Michael Torres stepped forward. Ms. Thompson, on behalf of Delta Operations, I'm terminating Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster effective immediately. Their conduct today and the pattern of behavior Elena has described is completely incompatible with Delta's values. Jessica's eyes went wide with panic. You can't fire me. I have 12 years with this company I was following, established procedures. Jessica Michael replied, showing racial hostility toward passengers, is not an established procedure. It's grounds for immediate termination. Amanda Foster tried one last desperate gambit. This is unfair. We're being scapegoated for policies that came from management. Maya stepped closer to Amanda. Which management policy told you to question passengers' financial status based on their skin color? Amanda's mouth opened and closed, but no answer emerged. Elena Rivera approached Maya respectfully. "Ms. Thompson, I know I'm just a new employee, but I want to help fix this. What you experienced today, no passenger should ever go through that." Maya smiled at Elena, the first genuinely warm expression she'd shown since the ordeal began. "Elena, you're exactly the kind of employee Delta needs more of. Your willingness to speak up even as a new hire shows integrity that some 12-year veterans apparently lack." Chief Williams approached with documentation. "Mrs. Thompson, we've completed initial incident reports. Would you like to pursue formal charges against the individuals involved?" Maya considered the question carefully. She had the power to destroy Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster completely, criminally, financially, professionally. But destruction wasn't her goal. Change was. Chief Williams: "I want to focus on ensuring this never happens again, rather than punishment for its own sake. But I do want a complete investigation into the pattern of discrimination Elena has described." Carlos approached Maya respectfully, his live stream still running. "Ms. Thompson, your story has been viewed by over 50,000 people in the last hour. People are asking what they can do to support change in the airline industry." Maya looked directly into Carlos's camera, addressing his audience. "What happened today isn't unusual. It's just usually invisible. The difference is that today someone was paying attention and recording. We need more people willing to witness discrimination and speak up, even when it's uncomfortable." The message resonated immediately. Carlos's chat exploded with commitments to document and report discrimination when witnessed. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Story, picked up by Washington Post, New York Times, CNNBBC. "This is international news now. How do you want to proceed?" Maya typed back, "Full transparency, complete accountability. This story doesn't end until the culture changes." As Maya prepared to address the growing media attention, she reflected on the 8-year-old girl who had been told she didn't belong at a country club pool party 34 years earlier. That little girl had promised herself she would someday own institutions that practiced exclusion. Today, she was keeping that promise. But ownership, Maya had learned, was just the beginning. Real change required using that ownership to ensure that no other 8-year-old would ever hear the words, "People like you don't belong here." The fight was just beginning. The atmosphere at Gate B12 had transformed from routine airport operations to something resembling a courtroom where judgment was about to be rendered. Carlos Martinez's live stream had become appointment viewing for over 75,000 people worldwide, and every major news organization was scrambling to get reporters to DFW Airport. Maya Thompson stood at the center of it all, no longer the passenger being questioned and humiliated, but the authority figure whose word would determine the fate of everyone involved. The shift in power dynamics was so complete that even the air seemed to crackle with electricity. David Rodriguez's voice cut through the tension. "Maya, I'm walking through the terminal now. I can see the news crews setting up outside the gate area. This has become a national story." "Good," Maya replied, her voice carrying clearly across the space. "Transparency is the only path to accountability." Jessica Palmer watched this exchange with growing horror. The woman she'd dismissed and degraded was speaking casually with Delta's CEO as equals no as superior to subordinate. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. "This can't be happening," Jessica whispered, but her words were picked up by multiple recording devices. Elena Rivera, emboldened by the support Maya had shown her, stepped forward again. "Ms. Thompson, there's more you need to know about the culture here." Maya turned to Elena with interest. "Tell me." Elena took a deep breath, glancing nervously at Michael Torres, who nodded encouragingly. Jessica and Amanda weren't operating alone. They had informal quotas for identifying suspicious passengers. They bragged about preventing what they called upgrade abuse by minorities who didn't deserve premium service. The revelation hit the gate area like a physical blow. Carlos's live stream chat exploded with outrage. "Quotas for racism. This is institutional. Shut it down. Criminal investigation. Now! Michael Torres's face had gone ashen. Elena, are you saying there was an organized effort to discriminate against minority passengers? Yes, sir. And it wasn't just at this gate. Jessica talked about other supervisors at other gates who shared their methods. Maya's expression hardened. What she'd experienced today wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a coordinated pattern of discrimination operating within her own airline. Amanda Foster, realizing that Elena's revelations were sealing her fate, made a desperate attempt to shift blame. We were never told to discriminate. We were told to maintain standards, to look out for irregular patterns. Irregular patterns. Maya's voice was dangerously quiet. Explain what you mean by that, Amanda. Amanda's mouth opened and closed, realizing she was about to incriminate herself further. We were trained to notice when passengers didn't fit typical demographics for first-class service. And what demographics are typical for first-class service, Amanda? The question hung in the air like a trap. Everyone in the gate area knew what Amanda meant, but saying it out loud would be career suicide. Not saying it would be an admission that her entire justification was built on racial profiling. Lisa Hayes, the entitled passenger who had supported Jessica's actions earlier, was now trying to blend into the crowd of onlookers. But Maya had noticed her attempted retreat. Ms. Hayes. Maya called out, causing Lisa to freeze mid-step. Earlier, you mentioned quality control and ensuring that people who fit the first-class environment were given priority. Could you elaborate on that? Lisa's face flushed red as dozens of phones turned toward her, recording her response. She realized that her earlier comments enthusiastically supporting discrimination were about to be broadcast to the world. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Lisa stammered. Really? Because I recorded your exact words. Would you like me to play them back? Carlos's audience was eating this up. The live viewer count had climbed past 100,000, and hashtag Lisa Hayes was beginning to trend alongside hashtag DFW Gate and hashtag Delta Owner. Lisa Hayes suddenly found urgent business elsewhere in the terminal and hurried away, but not before several passengers had captured clear footage of her fleeing the scene. David Rodriguez appeared at the gate entrance, flanked by Delta executives and airport security. At 45, the CEO carried himself with the controlled urgency of someone whose company was facing a public relations catastrophe that could define his tenure. Maya David said as he approached, "I am profoundly sorry for what you've experienced today." The gate area fell silent as passengers realized they were witnessing a direct interaction between airline owner and CEO in the aftermath of a discrimination incident that had gone viral worldwide. Maya studied David carefully. She'd hired him 18 months ago, specifically because of his commitment to operational excellence and cultural change. Today would test whether that commitment extended to moments of genuine crisis. David Maya said what Elena has revealed suggests this isn't an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of institutionalized discrimination within Delta. David's expression grew grim. We're going to investigate every aspect of what happened here, and we're going to implement immediate changes to ensure it never happens again. Jessica Palmer, listening to this exchange, finally understood the full magnitude of her situation. She wasn't just being disciplined by management, she was being held accountable by the owner of the entire company for behavior that had now been witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. Mr. Rodriguez, Jessica said desperately, "I need you to understand that I was never trained to discriminate. I was doing what I thought was best for the airline." David turned to Jessica with an expression of controlled anger. "Jessica, you told our owner that she didn't belong in first class because of her race. You accused her of credit card fraud without evidence. You created a hostile environment for a paying passenger. Exactly how did you think this was best for Delta?" Michael Torres stepped forward with documentation. "Mr. Rodriguez, based on Elena Rivera's testimony and preliminary investigation, It appears that Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster were operating what amounted to an unofficial screening protocol targeting minority passengers. David's jaw tightened. A screening protocol. They had informal criteria for identifying passengers they considered suspicious, and those criteria appear to have been based primarily on race and ethnicity. Carlos's livestream audience was witnessing corporate accountability in real time. Comments flooded the chat. This is what justice looks like. Finally, executives taking responsibility. Make this the standard everywhere. Maya addressed the gathered crowd of passengers, many of whom had missed their flights, but remained to witness the resolution of this incident. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've seen today represents a failure of institutional culture, but it also represents an opportunity for genuine change. Elena Rivera showed courage by speaking up about discrimination she witnessed. Carlos Martinez documented everything so the world could see. Many of you chose to stay and witness rather than look away. She paused, letting her words sink in. This is how institutions change, not through policy memos or sensitivity training alone, but through people refusing to accept discrimination as normal. Elena Rivera approached Maya with a formal-looking document. Ms. Thompson, I've written down everything I've witnessed over the past week, including specific incident dates and the passengers involved. I think some of them should be contacted and offered apologies. Maya reviewed Elena's documentation with growing concern. The pattern was clear, detailed, and damning. Elena, this represents a deliberate approach to discrimination. David, we need legal review of every passenger service complaint filed at this location over the past year. David nodded grimly. Already initiated. Our legal team is en route. Amanda Foster made one final attempt at self-preservation. Mr. Rodriguez, I want to emphasize that we never intended to discriminate against anyone. We were trying to maintain operational security. Maya turned to Amanda with a look that could have melted steel. Amanda's intention is irrelevant when the impact is discrimination. You participated in denying service to paying customers based on their race. You called security on me for being black in first class. You enabled a culture of prejudice. Your intentions don't absolve you of responsibility for the harm you caused. Chief Williams approached with additional security personnel. Ms. Thompson, we've completed documentation of the incident. We also have confirmation that this interaction was recorded by airport security cameras from multiple angles. Good. I want complete transparency about what happened here today. Carlos raised his hand. Ms. Thompson, people watching the stream are asking what they can do to support change in the airline industry. Maya looked directly into Carlos's camera, addressing his massive audience. Document discrimination when you see it. Report it immediately. Support businesses that take accountability seriously. And never, ever accept being told you don't belong somewhere because of who you are. The message resonated powerfully. Carlos's chat exploded with commitments to action sharing of personal experiences and expressions of support for Maya's stance. David Rodriguez addressed the gate area, effective immediately. Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster are terminated from Delta Airlines for violation of our customer service standards and anti-discrimination policies. Elena Rivera is promoted to gate supervisor with immediate authority to implement new passenger service protocols. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause. Elena Rivera, who had started the day as a nervous new employee afraid to speak up, was now being promoted for her courage in confronting discrimination. Jessica Palmer's 12-year career ended not with recognition or retirement, but with termination for cause broadcast live to over 150,000 viewers worldwide. As security escorted her from the gate area, she made one final statement. "This isn't fair. I was doing my job." Maya's response was swift and final. Your job was customer service, not customer discrimination. You chose to use your position to harm people instead of helping them. These are the consequences of that choice. As Jessica was escorted away, passengers throughout the gate area began sharing their own experiences of airline discrimination. The incident had created a space for truth-telling that extended far beyond what happened to Maya Thompson. An elderly black minister spoke up. "I've been flying for 40 years, and I can't count how many times I've been questioned about my first-class seat." A young Latina professional nodded. "They always assume I'm flying on someone else's miles or using a company card I'm not authorized to have." A Hispanic family shared their experience of being told their children were too disruptive for first class despite having confirmed seats. Carlos was capturing all of these testimonials, creating a real-time documentary of institutional discrimination in air travel. Maya listened to each story with growing resolve. What happened to her today was part of a much larger pattern of discrimination that needed to be addressed comprehensively, not just punished individually. David Maya said, "We need to expand this investigation beyond DFW. If this pattern exists here, it likely exists at other locations." David nodded. "I'll initiate a comprehensive audit of customer service practices company-wide." Elena Rivera approached with her notebook. "Ms. Thompson, I have contact information for several passengers who were discriminated against in recent weeks. Should we reach out to them?" "Absolutely. They deserve apologies and compensation for their experiences." Maya's phone buzzed with a call from Sarah Mitchell. "Maya, the story has gone international. BBC, Al Jazeera, and major outlets in 6 countries are requesting interviews. This has become a global conversation about corporate accountability and discrimination." Maya looked around the gate area at the passengers who had chosen to witness rather than ignore discrimination. At Elena Rivera, who had found her voice and used it courageously. At Carlos Martinez, whose documentation had made accountability impossible to avoid. At David Rodriguez, whose leadership was being tested in real time. Sarah Maya said schedule interviews with every major outlet. This story needs to be told completely and accurately. As news crews continued arriving at DFW Airport, Maya realized that what had started as a routine business trip had become something much larger, a watershed moment for accountability in corporate America. The 8-year-old girl who had been told she didn't belong at a country club pool party was now ensuring that no one else would be told they didn't belong in first class. But the real work was just beginning. The immediate aftermath of Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster's terminations sent shockwaves through not just Gate B12, but the entire DFW Airport operation. Word spread quickly through the terminal staff network. 2 supervisors had been fired on the spot for discriminating against a passenger who turned out to own the airline. Elena Rivera stood behind the counter where just hours earlier she had been a nervous new employee afraid to challenge her supervisors. Now, with her promotion to gate supervisor, she found herself at the center of what was rapidly becoming the most significant customer service incident in Delta's recent history. Ms. Thompson Elena said, her voice stronger than it had been all day. "I want to make sure I understand my new responsibilities clearly. Are you authorizing me to investigate every passenger service complaint filed at this gate over the past 6 months?" Maya nodded. "Elena, I'm authorizing you to investigate, document, and report every instance of discriminatory behavior you can identify. I want to know exactly how widespread this pattern has been." Carlos Martinez's livestream had become a cultural phenomenon. With over 200,000 live viewers and climbing, his documentation of corporate accountability in real time was being shared across every major social media platform. #ElenaPromoted and #Justice@DFW were trending worldwide, alongside the original #DFWU Gate hashtag. David Rodriguez addressed the crowd that had gathered around Gate B12. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today represents a failure of our corporate culture, but it also represents our commitment to immediate change. Delta Airlines will not tolerate discrimination in any form at any level. A middle-aged black businessman in the crowd called out, "Mr. Rodriguez, how do we know this isn't just public relations damage control? How do we know things will actually change?" David looked to Maya before responding. This was her airline, her investment, her vision for change. She had the authority to make promises he would have to keep. Maya stepped forward. "Sir, that's a fair question. Change requires more than firing bad actors. It requires changing the conditions that enabled their behavior." She pulled out her phone and placed a call that everyone could hear. "Sarah, I need you to authorize immediate implementation of Protocol 7 across all Delta operations." Sarah Mitchell's voice came through clearly. "Maya, that's a $75 million commitment for new technology and training." "Are you sure I'm sure? Implement it today." The crowd murmured with interest. Protocol 7 was clearly something significant, though most passengers had no idea what it entailed. Maya addressed the gathered passengers. "Protocol 7 is a comprehensive anti-discrimination monitoring program we've been developing for 18 months. It includes real-time oversight of passenger interactions, mandatory bias training for all customer-facing employees, and immediate response protocols for discrimination complaints." Elena Rivera looked up from her notebook. "Ms. Thompson, does this mean every gate agent interaction will be monitored for bias? It means every interaction will be reviewed for patterns of discrimination, and any agent who shows bias will be immediately retrained or removed." Michael Torres approached with a tablet full of preliminary investigation results. "Ms. Thompson, our initial review shows that Jessica Palmer downgraded or questioned 23 passengers in the past year. 22 of those passengers were minorities. The statistical pattern was damning. Carlos's livestream audience reacted with outrage. 22 out of 23. That's not coincidence. Criminal charges now. Sue them into bankruptcy." Amanda Foster, who had been standing silently since her termination, finally spoke up. "Those numbers are misleading. There were legitimate operational reasons for most of those interactions." Maya turned to Amanda with ice-cold precision. "Amanda, what operational reason justified telling a black passenger that first class isn't for people like her?" Amanda's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. Elena Rivera consulted her notes. "Ms. Thompson, I documented 3 specific incidents this week where Amanda instructed gate agents to be extra careful with minority passengers in first class." David Rodriguez's expression grew darker. "Extra careful how additional ID verification, income questioning, and what she called elevated scrutiny for irregular patterns." Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming call from her legal team. She answered on speaker, "Maya, this is our legal counsel. We've completed preliminary review of the passenger service complaints Elena documented. You're looking at potential civil rights violations, not just customer service failures." The legal implications were becoming clear. This wasn't just about corporate policy, it was potentially about federal anti-discrimination law. Chief Williams approached with airport security documentation. "Ms. Thompson, we've identified 7 other incidents in the past month where security was called to this gate for passenger disputes. 6 of those incidents involved minority passengers. The pattern was undeniable. Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster hadn't been implementing overzealous customer service, they'd been operating what amounted to racial profiling with corporate backing." Carlos addressed his live stream audience. "Y'all were witnessing justice in real time. This woman isn't just changing one airline, she's setting a precedent for corporate accountability everywhere." His chat was exploding with comments from viewers sharing their own experiences of discrimination in various industries, hotels, restaurants, retail stores, banks. Maya's confrontation of airline bias was resonating far beyond air travel. A young Hispanic woman in the crowd approached Maya respectfully. "Ms. Thompson, my name is Sofia Gonzalez. I'm a social media manager and I've been tracking the viral spread of this story. You're currently trending in 12 countries, and major civil rights organizations are asking to partner with you on broader anti-discrimination initiatives. Maya considered this information carefully. What started as personal experience of discrimination was becoming a global conversation about institutional bias. Sophia, what kind of partnership are they proposing? Using your incident as a model for corporate accountability, showing other companies how to respond to discrimination with immediate action rather than defensive public relations. David Rodriguez stepped closer to Maya. Maya, we're getting calls from other airline CEOs asking about our response protocols. This incident is being studied industry-wide as an example of crisis management. Elena Rivera looked up from her documentation again. Ms. Thompson, I've identified contact information for 18 passengers who were discriminated against at this gate. Some of them filed formal complaints that were never properly investigated. Elena, I want personal apologies and compensation offers sent to every single one of them, and I want to know why their complaints weren't investigated. Michael Torres consulted his tablet. Ms. Thompson preliminary investigation suggests that Jessica Palmer had authority to close passenger complaints without escalation to management review. The structural problems were becoming clear. Discrimination wasn't just happening, it was being covered up through inadequate oversight and complaint resolution processes. Maya addressed the crowd again. What you're seeing today is why I invested in Delta Airlines. Not to make money, I have enough money, but to demonstrate that institutions can change when ownership is committed to justice. An elderly black woman in the crowd spoke up. Ms. Thompson, I've been flying Delta for 30 years. I can't tell you how many times I've been made to feel unwelcome. Thank you for finally doing something about it. Carlos's live stream was capturing these testimonials in real time, creating a powerful documentary of how discrimination affects real people's lives. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Maya C. NN wants an exclusive interview. They're sending Anderson Cooper to DFW. NBC, CBS, and ABC are also en route. This is the biggest corporate accountability story of the year. Maya typed back, schedule interviews with everyone. Transparency is our only path forward. Jessica Palmer, who had been escorted to airport security offices for processing, sent a message through Michael Torres requesting to speak with Maya privately. The message claimed she had information about other supervisors engaging in similar discrimination. Maya considered the request carefully. Michael tell Jessica that any information she has about widespread discrimination should be provided to legal investigators, not shared in private conversations with me. Elena Rivera approached with more documentation. Ms. Thompson, I found evidence that Jessica and Amanda were sharing their suspicious passenger criteria with other gates. This pattern may exist throughout the airport. David Rodriguez immediately got on his phone. This is CEO Rodriguez. I need immediate suspension of all gate supervisors at DFW pending investigation into discriminatory practices. Effective immediately. The scope of the investigation was expanding rapidly. What began as one incident of discrimination was revealing an entire network of bias operating within Delta's operations. Carlos's live stream audience had grown to over 300,000 viewers worldwide. Major news organizations were sharing his stream, and hashtag Delta Accountability was trending in over 20 countries. Maya addressed Carlos directly. Carlos, your decision to document what happened here today has made accountability possible. Without your live stream, this might have been covered up or minimized. Carlos beamed with pride. Ms. Thompson, I've seen this kind of discrimination my whole life. Finally, seeing someone in power actually do something about it. This is historic. Sofia Gonzalez approached with her phone showing social media analytics. Ms. Thompson, your story has generated over 2 million interactions in the past 4 hours. People are sharing their own discrimination experiences and demanding action from other companies. The impact was spreading beyond airlines. Hotels, restaurants, retail stores, and other customer service industries were being pressured by consumers to implement similar accountability measures. Elena Rivera consulted her notes again. Ms. Thompson, I've documented evidence that discrimination training at this location was conducted by Jessica Palmer herself. She was literally training other employees in the biased practices she implemented. The institutional nature of the problem was becoming undeniable. Jessica Palmer hadn't been operating alone, she'd been teaching others to discriminate. David Rodriguez addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've discovered today goes far beyond individual bad actors. We're looking at institutional failures that require comprehensive reform. Maya nodded. David, I want complete restructuring of customer service training, new technology to monitor bias, and independent oversight of complaint resolution. Maya, that level of reform will cost hundreds of millions of dollars. David, discrimination has been costing us customers reputation and moral authority for years. The cost of change is less than the cost of continuing down this path. Chief Williams approached with final documentation. Ms. Thompson, we've completed our investigation of today's incident. All evidence supports your account of discrimination by Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster. Elena Rivera had filled an entire notebook with documentation of discriminatory practices. Ms. Thompson, I've identified a pattern affecting dozens of passengers over the past year. Maya looked around Gate B12 at the news crews setting up equipment at the passengers who had chosen to witness rather than ignore discrimination, at Elena Rivera documenting evidence of institutional bias at Carlos Martinez, whose live stream had made accountability inevitable. What started as a routine business trip had become a watershed moment for corporate responsibility. But Maya understood that firing 2 employees while necessary was just the beginning. Real change would require dismantling the entire culture that had enabled their behavior in the first place, and that work would begin immediately. Within hours of Jessica Palmer and Amanda Foster's terminations, the ripple effects of Maya Thompson's confrontation with airline discrimination began transforming not just Delta, but the entire travel industry. News of the incident had spread globally, and corporate executives across multiple industries were scrambling to review their own customer service practices. Maya stood in the Delta Regional Operations Center at DFW Airport, surrounded by tablets displaying real-time data about the company-wide investigation she had authorized. Elena Rivera sat beside her, promoted from nervous new employee to key investigator in less than 6 hours. Elena, Maya said, reviewing the preliminary reports, what you've documented represents the tip of the iceberg. Elena's notebook had grown into a comprehensive catalog of discrimination spanning multiple airports, dozens of employees, and hundreds of affected passengers. Ms. Thompson, the pattern exists at 11 different Delta locations. Jessica Palmer was sharing her screening methods with supervisors across the network. David Rodriguez joined them, looking exhausted but determined. Maya, we've suspended 17 gate supervisors pending investigation. Legal estimates will need to contact over 400 passengers who may have experienced discrimination. Carlos Martinez, whose live stream had evolved into a round-the-clock documentary of corporate accountability, addressed his audience of nearly 500,000 viewers. Y'all, we're watching history. This isn't just about one airline anymore. Companies worldwide are reviewing their policies because of what happened here today. Maya's phone buzzed with a call from the Secretary of Transportation. She answered on speaker, Ms. Thompson, this is Secretary Williams. The Department of Transportation has been monitoring the situation at DFW. We'd like to discuss implementing your accountability protocols industry-wide. The federal government was taking notice. What began as personal experience of discrimination was becoming a template for regulatory reform. Secretary Williams Maya responded, I'm committed to sharing our protocols with any organization serious about eliminating discrimination. Sofia Gonzalez approached with her laptop displaying social media analytics. Ms. Thompson, Hashtag Delta Accountability has generated over 10 million interactions worldwide. Major corporations in hospitality, retail, and financial services are announcing policy reviews in response to your incident. The impact was spreading far beyond aviation. Maya's confrontation of institutional bias was inspiring broader conversations about corporate responsibility across multiple industries. Elena Rivera consulted her expanded documentation. Ms. Thompson: I've been contacted by employees at other airlines who say similar practices exist at their companies. They're asking how to report discrimination without losing their jobs. Maya considered this carefully. Transforming one airline was significant, but transforming an entire industry would require coordination and resources beyond Delta's scope. Elena, document every contact you receive. We're going to create a whistleblower protection program that other companies can implement. David Rodriguez looked up from his tablet. Maya, we've received calls from the CEOs of American United Southwest and JetBlue. They want to discuss implementing similar accountability measures. Schedule a meeting with all of them. If we're going to change this industry, we need collaboration, not just competition. Michael Torres approached with legal documentation. Ms. Thompson, our investigation has revealed that discriminatory practices were enabled by inadequate oversight structures. Gate supervisors had too much authority with too little accountability. Maya nodded. Michael, effective immediately. No single employee can downgrade or question a passenger without supervisory review that gets documented and tracked. Elena Rivera looked up from her notebook. Ms. Thompson, several passengers I contacted said they stopped flying Delta because of discrimination they experienced. We're not just looking at individual incidents, we're looking at lost customers and damaged reputation over years. The business case for change was becoming clear. Discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was economically destructive. Carlos addressed his live stream audience. What we're seeing is proof that change is possible when people in power choose to use that power for justice instead of protecting the status quo. His audience was responding with thousands of personal stories, creating a real-time documentation of discrimination across industries and geographies. Maya's assistant, Sarah Mitchell, called with updates. Maya, we've received interview requests from 60 major media outlets worldwide. The Harvard Business School wants to create a case study. 3 documentary filmmakers are requesting access. This has become a global story about corporate accountability. Maya stepped outside the operations center to address the media crews that had gathered at DFW Airport. Cameras from CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, BBC, and major international outlets were positioned throughout the terminal. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya began. What happened here today exposed a pattern of discrimination that extended far beyond one gate or one airport. But it also demonstrated that institutions can change rapidly when leadership is committed to justice. A CNN reporter asked Ms. Thompson critics, say you're using your wealth to create a public relations spectacle. How do you respond? Maya's answer was immediate. If holding employees accountable for discrimination is a public relations spectacle, then every company should be having spectacles. The real question is why accountability seems so unusual that it becomes newsworthy. A BBC journalist followed up Ms. Thompson. You've inspired similar accountability measures at companies worldwide. Do you see this as a model for corporate responsibility? I see this as a minimum standard for human dignity. Companies shouldn't need to be embarrassed into treating customers fairly. Elena Rivera joined Maya for the press conference. Her transformation from frightened new employee to confident whistleblower inspiring viewers worldwide. Elena, an NBC reporter, asked, "You risked your job to expose discrimination. What message do you have for other employees who witness bias?" Elena's response was powerful. Silence enables discrimination. Speaking up might feel risky, but staying silent guarantees that discrimination will continue. Carlos Martinez's live stream was capturing the press conference, providing unfiltered access to corporate accountability in real time. David Rodriguez announced Delta's comprehensive response. Effective immediately, Delta is implementing industry-leading anti-discrimination protocols. Every customer interaction will be monitored for bias. Every complaint will be investigated independently. Every employee will receive enhanced bias training, Maya added. We're also creating a $50 million fund for diversity initiatives in aviation scholarships for underrepresented minorities and support for other companies implementing similar reforms. The financial commitment was significant, but Maya understood that meaningful change required substantial investment. Elena Rivera presented her findings to the media. We've documented over 300 incidents of discrimination at Delta locations nationwide. Every affected passenger will receive personal apologies and compensation. The scope of the investigation was staggering, but so was Delta's commitment to accountability. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal asked Ms. Thompson, "What's the business case for these expensive reforms?" Maya's answer was comprehensive. Discrimination costs companies, customers, reputation, talent, and legal exposure. The business case for equality isn't just moral, it's mathematical. Sofia Gonzalez shared social media data. Companies that have announced policy changes in response to Maya Thompson's incident have seen immediate improvements in customer sentiment and brand perception. The market was responding positively to accountability, demonstrating that ethical behavior could be profitable. Carlos addressed his massive live stream audience. "Y'all, we're witnessing the power of documentation and transparency. When discrimination happens in darkness, it continues. When it happens in light, it ends." Maya's phone buzzed with a call from the NAACP president. "Ms. Thompson, we'd like to partner with Delta on creating accountability standards that other companies can adopt." "Absolutely. Corporate responsibility shouldn't be proprietary, it should be shared." Elena Rivera consulted her notes. "Ms. Thompson, I've been contacted by employees from hotels, restaurants, and retail stores asking how to report discrimination in their industries." Maya realized that Delta's transformation was inspiring broader change. "Elena, we're going to create an accountability toolkit that any company can implement." David Rodriguez announced additional measures. Delta is partnering with historically black colleges and universities to create aviation career pipelines. We're also implementing supplier diversity requirements for all vendor relationships. The reforms extended beyond customer service to encompass hiring, promotion, and business partnerships. A reporter asked Ms. Thompson, "Do you believe your incident will create lasting change, or will companies return to previous practices once media attention fades?" Maya's response was definitive. "We're implementing permanent oversight structures, public accountability measures, and financial incentives for equality. This isn't a temporary response. It's a permanent transformation." Elena Rivera addressed the media. "Change is possible when leaders choose accountability over defensiveness." Maya Thompson could have accepted an apology and moved on. Instead, she chose to ensure this never happens to anyone else. Carlos's live stream audience had grown to over 600,000 viewers worldwide, making it one of the largest real-time documentaries of corporate accountability in history. Maya concluded the press conference. "What happened here today proves that institutions can change rapidly when leadership is committed to justice. But individual incidents of accountability aren't enough. We need cultural transformation across industries." As the press conference ended, Maya reflected on the day's events. What began as routine business travel had become a watershed moment for corporate responsibility. But the real test wouldn't be media coverage or public statements. It would be whether the changes implemented today would prevent future discrimination. Maya was committed to ensuring they would. The 8-year-old girl told she didn't belong at a country club pool party was now ensuring that no one would be told they didn't belong anywhere. The transformation was just beginning. 6 months after the incident at Gate B12, Maya Thompson walked through the same DFW Airport terminal where her confrontation with institutional discrimination had sparked a global movement for corporate accountability. The changes were visible everywhere, from new diversity training certificates displayed at every gate to electronic monitoring programs that tracked customer service interactions for bias patterns. Elena Rivera, now regional manager for passenger experience across the Southwest, greeted Maya with the confidence of someone whose courage had been rewarded with responsibility and respect. "Ms. Thompson, welcome back to DFW. I think you'll be pleased with what we've accomplished." The transformation was remarkable. Gate B12. Once the site of discrimination and humiliation, had become a symbol of accountability and change. A small plaque near the boarding area commemorated the incident, reading, "Dedication to Dignity." This location represents our commitment that every passenger will be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or identity. Carlos Martinez approached no longer just a college student with a phone, but now a documentary filmmaker whose recording of Maya's incident had been viewed by over 50 million people worldwide. His live stream that day had evolved into a full-length documentary about corporate accountability that was being used in business schools across the country. "Ms. Thompson," Carlos said, "I wanted to thank you again for what you did that day. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong somewhere." Maya smiled warmly. "Carlos, your decision to document everything made accountability possible. Without your live stream, this might have been covered up or forgotten." Elena Rivera consulted her tablet, showing impressive statistics. "Ms. Thompson, discrimination complaints across Delta's network are down 87% from 6 months ago. Customer satisfaction has reached record highs. Most importantly, passengers of all backgrounds report feeling welcomed and respected." The numbers told a story of transformation. But Maya was more interested in the human stories behind the statistics. As if reading her thoughts, Elena continued, "We've received over 3,000 letters from passengers thanking us for the culture change. People are sharing stories about flying comfortably for the first time, bringing their families on trips they previously avoided, choosing Delta specifically because they know they'll be treated fairly." A young black woman approached Maya respectfully. "Excuse me, are you Maya Thompson?" Maya nodded. "My name is Jasmine Williams. I'm a medical student, and 6 months ago I was humiliated at this very gate when a supervisor questioned whether I could afford my first-class seat. Today I flew first class again for the first time since that incident, and I was treated with complete respect. Thank you for making that possible." Stories like Jasmine's had become common. Maya's confrontation of discrimination had created ripple effects that extended far beyond airline customer service. David Rodriguez joined them, carrying a comprehensive report on the changes implemented across Delta's operations. "Maya, I wanted to share the results of our transformation initiative with you personally." Maya reviewed the document with interest. The scope of change was breathtaking comprehensive bias training for all employees. New technology monitoring, customer interactions, independent oversight of complaint, resolution partnerships with civil rights organizations, and substantial investments in diversity and inclusion. David Maya said these results demonstrate what's possible when institutions prioritize justice over protecting the status quo. Sophia Gonzalez, the social media manager who had tracked the viral spread of Maya's story, approached with her laptop displaying global analytics. "Ms. Thompson, your incident inspired policy changes at over 200 major corporations worldwide. Hotels, restaurants, retail stores, and financial institutions have implemented similar accountability measures. The impact extended far beyond aviation. Maya's confrontation of bias had become a template for corporate responsibility across industries." Elena Rivera shared more positive news. "Ms. Thompson, we've hired and promoted more minority employees in the past 6 months than in the previous 5 years combined." Our training programs are being studied by companies worldwide. Carlos showed Maya clips from his documentary now titled The Seat at the Table: How Maya Thompson Changed Corporate America. The film had won several awards and was being screened at festivals internationally. Ms. Thompson, Carlos said your story has inspired people worldwide to speak up against discrimination. We're seeing increased reporting of bias, more corporate accountability, and genuine cultural change. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Mitchell. Maya Time magazine wants to name you Person of the Year for your impact on corporate accountability. Harvard Business School has created a case study. The United Nations wants you to address their Committee on Corporate Responsibility. Maya had never sought public recognition, but she understood that visibility could amplify the message about institutional change. A group of Delta employees approached representing the diversity of staff that now worked throughout the airline. A young Hispanic man spoke for the group, Ms. Thompson. We wanted you to know that your actions didn't just change policies. They changed our workplace culture. We feel respected, valued, and empowered to speak up when we see problems. Elena Rivera nodded. Ms. Thompson, employee satisfaction surveys show that staff across all demographics feel more confident reporting discrimination and bias. The fear of retaliation has been replaced with expectation of accountability. Maya reflected on the contrast with 6 months earlier when Elena had been a frightened new employee, afraid to challenge discrimination. David Rodriguez shared financial data. Maya, despite the substantial investment in reform, Delta's customer satisfaction, employee retention, and market share have all improved significantly. Ethical business practices have proven profitable. The business case for equality had been demonstrated conclusively. Carlos addressed his camera documenting this 6-month follow-up. What we're seeing today is proof that sustainable change is possible when people in power choose to use that power for justice. A family approached Maya, an elderly black couple, with their granddaughter. The grandfather spoke with emotion. Ms. Thompson, my wife and I have been flying for 40 years. We've experienced countless incidents of discrimination that we just accepted as normal. Thank you for showing us that normal doesn't have to mean acceptable. Their granddaughter, about 8 years old, looked up at Maya with bright eyes. My teacher says you're a hero because you stood up to bullies. Maya knelt down to the child's eye level. Sweetie, you don't have to be special to stand up for what's right. You just have to care about treating people fairly. Elena Rivera watched this interaction with a smile. Ms. Thompson, that little girl, represents the generation that won't have to experience what you experienced. They'll grow up expecting equality instead of fighting for it. Sofia Gonzalez showed Maya social media posts from around the world, passengers sharing positive travel experiences, employees reporting improved workplace cultures, and companies announcing new accountability measures. Ms. Thompson, Sophia said your hashtag #justice, at DFW has evolved into #justice_everywhere. People are using your model to demand accountability in their own communities and workplaces. Carlos interviewed several passengers for his ongoing documentation. A young Latina professional who now travels confidently for work, a black military veteran who no longer faces questioning about his first-class benefits, an Asian American family who chose Delta specifically because of their commitment to equality. Maya's phone rang with a call from the Secretary of Transportation. Ms. Thompson, Congress is considering legislation requiring all airlines to implement accountability measures similar to yours. Would you be willing to testify about the effectiveness of these reforms? Maya agreed immediately. Legislative change could ensure that accountability measures extended beyond companies choosing to implement them voluntarily. Elena Rivera shared her personal transformation. Ms. Thompson, 6 months ago. I was afraid to speak up about discrimination I witnessed. Today, I'm training other employees to recognize and report bias. Your courage gave me permission to find my own voice. David Rodriguez announced additional initiatives. Maya, we're expanding our accountability model to Delta's international operations. We're also creating a coalition of companies committed to similar standards. The transformation was spreading globally. Carlos showed Maya messages from his documentary audience, thousands of people sharing how her story had inspired them to confront discrimination in their own lives, report bias they witnessed, and demand accountability from institutions they interact with. Ms. Thompson, Carlos said your incident created a cultural moment where accountability became expected instead of exceptional. Maya walked to the exact spot at gate B12 where Jessica Palmer had told her that first class wasn't for people like her. The location was now marked with a small memorial plaque, but more importantly, it was staffed by Elena Rivera and a diverse team committed to treating every passenger with dignity. A young black businessman approached Ms. Thompson. I fly through DFW regularly for work. 6 months ago, I always felt tense approaching the gate, wondering if I'd be questioned or challenged. Today, I feel welcomed and respected. Thank you for changing that. Elena Rivera consulted her tablet. Ms. Thompson, we've tracked customer sentiment across all demographics, and the improvement has been consistent. People feel safer traveling, more comfortable in premium cabins, and more confident that complaints will be addressed fairly. Sofia Gonzalez shared global impact data. Ms. Thompson, companies that implemented accountability measures inspired by your incident have seen improved customer loyalty, employee satisfaction, and brand perception worldwide. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant Maya. The documentary about your incident has been submitted for Academy Award consideration. Your story is being taught in schools. You've become a symbol of how individual courage can create institutional change. Carlos addressed his camera for his final documentation. 6 months ago, we witnessed discrimination confronted with accountability. Today, we're seeing the lasting impact of choosing justice over silence. Maya stood in the center of Gate B12, surrounded by the evidence of transformation, diverse staff treating all passengers with respect, accountability programs, preventing discrimination, and a culture that prioritized dignity over bias. She thought about the 8-year-old girl who had been told she didn't belong at a country club pool party 34 years earlier. That little girl had promised herself she would someday own institutions that practiced exclusion so she could change them. Today, that promise was fulfilled. But Maya understood that her individual story was part of a larger narrative about institutional change. What happened at Gate B12 had demonstrated that accountability was possible, that discrimination could be confronted, and that cultures could transform rapidly when leadership chose justice over protecting the status quo. Elena Rivera approached with a final update. Ms. Thompson, we just received word that the last of the passengers who experienced discrimination under the previous culture has been contacted, apologized to, and compensated. Every person affected by the bias you exposed has been acknowledged. Maya nodded with satisfaction. Individual accountability was important, but healing required acknowledging harm and making amends. David Rodriguez joined them with news from the broader industry. Maya, the airline industry coalition we formed, has been adopted by over 30 international carriers. Your accountability model is becoming the global standard for customer service. Carlos packed up his camera equipment, his documentation of transformation complete. Ms. Thompson, what started as a live stream about discrimination, has become a historical record of how institutions can change. Sofia Gonzalez showed Maya final social media analytics. Ms. Thompson, #justice, at DFW has generated over 100 million interactions worldwide. Your story has reached people in every country, inspiring local accountability movements. As the sun set over DFW Airport, Maya reflected on the day's events. Gate B12 had been transformed from a site of discrimination into a symbol of accountability. Elena Rivera had evolved from a frightened new employee into a confident leader. Carlos Martinez had grown from a college student with a phone into a documentary filmmaker, changing conversations about corporate responsibility. Maya walked toward her departure gate, ironically the same Flight 447 to Atlanta she had been attempting to board 6 months earlier. This time she was greeted with warmth and respect by staff, who treated every passenger with dignity regardless of their appearance or background. As she settled into her first-class seat, the same 2A she had been denied 6 months earlier, Maya opened her phone to review messages from people worldwide, sharing their own stories of confronting discrimination and demanding accountability. The 8-year-old girl who had been told she didn't belong at a pool party had grown up to ensure that no one else would be told they didn't belong anywhere. But more importantly, that little girl's courage had inspired millions of others to find their own voices, challenge their own institutions, and create their own changes. The transformation was no longer about Maya Thompson or Delta Airlines or even the travel industry. It was about the fundamental human right to be treated with dignity and the collective responsibility to ensure that right was protected everywhere, for everyone. Maya Thompson's journey from humiliated passenger to catalyst for global change proves that true power lies not in demanding respect, but in creating conditions that ensure respect for everyone. Her confrontation of discrimination at Gate B12 sparked a worldwide movement demonstrating that institutions can transform rapidly when leadership chooses justice over protecting bias. The 8-year-old girl told she didn't belong at a country club pool party grew up to reshape entire industries, ensuring that no child would ever again hear the words, "People like you don't belong here." Today, millions of travelers benefit from Maya's 14 minutes of quiet courage at DFW Airport. But her legacy extends far beyond aviation. It reaches every person who now expects accountability instead of accepting discrimination, every employee empowered to speak up instead of staying silent, and every institution that prioritizes dignity over bias. Maya didn't just reclaim her seat in first class. She redefined what belonging means in corporate America. Change doesn't require permission from those who benefit from injustice, Maya said in her final interview. It requires courage from those who refuse to accept injustice as normal. The moment you stop asking for equality and start ensuring it, you discover that transformation was always possible. It just needed someone brave enough to begin. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that shine a light on justice and transformation. Your engagement helps ensure that stories like Maya's reach people who need inspiration to stand up for what's right. Together we can keep pushing for progress, one story and one voice at a time. Thanks for watching, and remember, you have more power to create change than you think.